In the closing pages of the Old Testament, there's this sobering response to man's cry as to why the Lord will not accept his weeping and his tears and his offerings. Malachi 2:13 and 14 says this. It says, "You cover the altar of the Lord with tears, with weeping and with groaning, because he no longer regards the offering or accepts it with favor from your hand. Yet you say, for what reason? Because the Lord has been a witness between you and the wife of your youth, against whom you have dealt treacherously, though she is your companion and your wife by covenant." Now, men, I've seen that a lot, literally. Guys who have left their wives for another woman, who move money from their joint accounts and then freeze assets, so their wife barely has anything to live on, but who still will write big checks to their church, assuming that somehow it makes it all okay. They're clueless. They're mocking God. They're assuming He'll just give them a pass. You know, I've actually told some guys that until they humble themselves and accept responsibility and cut off their relationship with the other woman, that God does not want their money. Regardless of what the minimum code for marriage and divorce is in our culture, God will hold us accountable to the original plan. So stop whining and accept responsibility. Whenever I do a wedding ceremony, I do a short summary of God's original plans for marriage and the seriousness of the covenant. And then right on the front end of the ceremony, I ask the bride and the groom this question. I say, before we continue, understanding the magnitude of this moment, is it your desire to enter into this covenant relationship called marriage today? You know, it's kind of a gut check for them and really a declaration to their families and their friends that we mean business. In the wedding ceremony itself, I use language that speaks to these foundational principles, and I've actually incorporated it into the vows. I printed what I use for the men in your outline. You may want to do this. You may want to surprise your wife with them. You could put them on a card, and you could say something like, "Honey, my love for you has grown so much since our wedding, X number of years ago." Now, be sure your math is correct before you write that down, okay? I want you to know that I would marry you all over again. And if I were writing vows to express the depth of what I feel for you today, this is what I would say. And here are the vows that I use. I promise to be your servant leader, to love you as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for it. I promise to lead you, to protect you, and to provide for you. I promise to honor you through my thoughts, through my words, and through my deeds. I promise to never leave you. You are God's precious gift to me, and I pledge my faithfulness to you until we are parted by death. This is my solemn vow. Marriages are breaking up at an unprecedented rate, and no one seems to know how to stop it. What's really disturbing is this. Did you know the divorce rate among Christian couples is only slightly better than among those who have no faith? I think one of the best books on marriage is His Needs, Her Needs by Willard Harley. It's about building an affair-proof marriage. Harley discovered through years of counseling and interviews with thousands of couples that while teaching better communication and conflict resolution skills, all that's good, he discovered there's an overarching principle that cannot be ignored. He said he stopped counseling and he started listening to spouses explain why they were ready to just throw in the towel. He started asking the question, what do you think it would take for you to be happily married again? And the answer he heard repeated over and over again was, for us to be in love again. Harley writes that couples didn't marry because they communicated so clearly and they resolved conflict so effectively. They married because they found each other irresistible. In other words, they were in love. Well, men, I believe and I teach that love is more than a feeling. It's an action. You see, there are lots of times we don't feel like doing the loving thing, but we can do it because love is more than a feeling. But here's the thing. If a relationship gets to the point where the feeling of love is non-existent, then it will quickly dry up. In His Needs, Her Needs, Harley writes this. He says, poor communication, failure to resolve conflicts, and fighting all contribute to the loss of love. But they're also symptoms of lost love. In other words, if I wanted to save marriage, I would have to go beyond improving communication. I would have to learn how to restore love. Well, love is more than a feeling, but when there's no feeling of love at all, maybe the Righteous Brothers were right. We need to know how to bring back that loving feeling. I think one of the best ways to do that is to focus on the needs of your wife and figure out how you can meet them. Harley says that marital conflict is created in one of two ways. Number one, couples fail to make each other happy. Or two, couples make each other unhappy. They deliberately make each other unhappy. In the first case, they're frustrated because their needs aren't being met. Harley calls that the failure to care for their needs. In the second case, they're deliberately hurting each other, and that would be the failure to protect. Well, I want to talk about the first one today, okay, the failure to care. When the needs of a husband or wife are not being cared for in their marriage, the implications are serious. And if they're children, then the legacy of their mom and dad is really just a faded picture of two people who tolerated each other, who grew bitter towards each other, even resentful, instead of this great legacy of a marriage relationship that modeled God's original plan. When the needs of a husband and a wife are not being met in their marriage, then a husband or wife can feel like they're left without ethical alternatives. Well, that's not true, but when they feel that way, they become a prime target for an affair. There are several books with lists of the needs of husbands and wives. I particularly like the way that Harley handles his list and His Needs, Her Needs. So in response to the question that he had asked, what could your spouse do for you that would make you the happiest? He's been able to classify most of their responses into 10 emotional needs. And they are admiration, affection, conversation, domestic support, family commitment, financial support, honesty and openness, physical attractiveness, recreational companionship, and sexual fulfillment. Now relax, okay? I'll list them again for you later and we'll put them in categories. But here's the first thing. Husbands and wives are typically willing to do for each other what they appreciate the most. For instance, if a big need for you is sexual fulfillment, then you are more than willing to meet that need for your wife, but that need may be the last thing on her list or not at all. Well, that doesn't mean that she doesn't ever want to have sex. It just means something different to her than it does to you. What you appreciate the most, she may appreciate the least. Now, this is a big lesson to learn. My needs are not her needs. When it comes to needs, every person is unique. While men on average pick a particular 5 emotional needs as their most important, and women on average pick another 5, the thing is, any individual can and does pick any combination of the basic 10. Are you with me? Now, just knowing what the averages are will make us aware of the needs of women in general and the needs of men in general. And that understanding is vital. The scriptures tell us this. It says, one of the prime objectives of a husband is to live with his wife in an understanding way. Now, gentlemen, you need to know that we will never complete that mission. That's because women are these beautiful and wonderfully complex creatures with so many fantastic layers that make them so, it makes them, I don't know, but you get the point, okay? We don't have to completely understand them, but we do have to live with them in an understanding way. This rugged first century fisherman named Peter, the same one who warned us about our common enemy, the devil, he put it this way. He said, you husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, as with a weaker vessel, since she is a woman, and grant her honor as a fellow heir of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. Now, if we don't do this, then God won't hear our prayers. You might want to underline that part. That's pretty important. I want to list the top 5 needs of men and women. We'd really need an entire session to discuss them all, but I'm just going to list them today. Most of them are self-explanatory, and they really should give you a general idea of how they work. But I'm going to challenge you to research them on your own. Maybe even pick up Harley's book and make it your objective to totally understand them, so you can live with your wives in an understanding way. Here we go. On the average, the top 5 needs of men are sexual fulfillment, recreational companionship, an attractive spouse, domestic support, and admiration or respect. Now, there are other lists, but I think this one's pretty good. I don't think I need to explain what sexual fulfillment is, but men and women are typically wired very differently in this area. In general, the cuddling part for her is equivalent to the climax part for him. Now, that's hard for most men to understand. Men need recreational companionship. A wife can learn to appreciate that and enjoy being his playmate. Now, if you tell your wife that you need her to be a playmate, be sure and explain what you mean. The third one, an attractive spouse. That doesn't mean a supermodel. Your wife should never feel like she has to compete with that, but attention to her physical appearance is important to a man. Domestic support, that's about order in the house. Most men need an environment that provides some peace and quiet. And that's going to be a huge challenge when children come along. Domestic nirvana, well, that's a fantasy. But the thing is, if your reality is too far away from that, if it consistently moves in and out of chaos, there will be trouble. Admiration or respect is a big need for men. Just knowing that his wife is proud of him is energizing to most men. Now, here's the list for the women. For women, on average, the top 5 needs are affection, conversation, honesty and openness, financial support, and family commitment. Now, don't confuse affection with sex. Think hugs and notes and kisses on the cheek, okay? Lots of hugs. With affection, you communicate to your wife, I'll take care of you and protect you. You are important to me. I'm concerned about you, and I am with you. I'm proud of you. Conversation, guys, that takes practice for us. Turn off the TV. Look into her eyes. Then ask her questions about her day, and then you better be prepared for her to answer. Don't be texting someone while she's answering. Don't try and solve her problems either, okay? Just learn to listen and communicate that you understand. And then that leads to the next thing, honesty and openness. And that's going to require trust and vulnerability, just like with true brotherhood. Only this kind of soul level connection, well, this is with your wife. Financial support, well, that one is a big deal to a lot of women. It's about security, okay? It's usually not about having a lot of stuff. It's about managing what you do have. That helps her feel secure. And so you need to talk honestly and openly about this and find out what security means to her. Is it a clear plan for retirement? Is it having 3 or even 6 months salary or more in savings? Is it no credit card debt? Well, some of you guys wish that was the case for you, okay? But working on it together will strengthen your marriage. Family commitment, that one's about being a good father and creating margin for your family so your wife and your children know that they're your number one priority. It means being fully engaged with your wife and your children, not just physically present. Now, those lists are based on averages. Keep that in mind. But it's not always that simple. Okay, remember that any individual can and does pick any combination of the basic 10. So every man needs to identify the combination of needs that are unique to his marriage. And if sexual fulfillment shows up on your wife's list as her top need for her, then gentlemen, be sure and thank God every day of your life. Another tool that I found very useful is a book called The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. The list applies really to both men and women. They are words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. Now, your love language is likely to be the one that you like to use to express love to your wife because that's really what you want from her. But if that's not her love language, then her needs will go uncared for. If you think her love language is receiving gifts, but it's really acts of service, well, she might appreciate all the stuff you buy for her, but what she really longs for is for you to just help with the dishes every now and then, or maybe clean the garage or paint the kitchen, if that's her primary love language. My wife's love language, her primary love language, it's quality time. And that means uninterrupted quality time. So when I carve out an unexpected day for us, and I really protect it, that means no email, no texting, no phone calls. That's what says, I love you to her. And she can tell when I'm not all there. And I can tell when I've been busted. As men, once we identify our wife's love language, then we have the tendency with our laser focus to ignore all the others, okay? We've got her love language and we just go straight for the money shot. Well, guys, that's just too one-dimensional. And after a while, pressing that one button over and over is going to become irritating to her. Be aware of her primary love language, but be balanced in the way you care for her. Now, remember, all that we're learning about the marriage relationship in the last round and in this one today, all of this feeds in to the legacy we leave. That's because a legacy, that's something you hand down. It's a heritage. It's a birthright. I want to show you how that works in the time we have left. When you look at God's original plans for the marriage relationship, you see this. A primary purpose is to release a healthy next generation. In Genesis 1:28, it says that, and God blessed them. And he said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. Now, for the man, that had to be one of the best commandments ever. But God wasn't just saying, hey, go have sex and have it to the full. You see, being fruitful and multiplying and subduing the earth, well, that takes a lot more than just sperm. Remember, real men are defined by the legacy, the life, and the fruit that comes out of them, not just by what they take in. God is relational, and he wants all of mankind to have a relationship with him, to be a part of his creative process. Raising sons and daughters who have that kind of connection, that kind of relationship with God, that's the goal. Our objective is clarified even more in Deuteronomy 6, where it explains how our children and our children's children can enjoy a long and meaningful life. It says this. It says, these are the commands, decrees, and laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you to observe in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess, so that your children and their children after them may fear the Lord your God as long as you live, by keeping all his decrees and commands that I give you, and so that you may enjoy long life. The health of a generation depends on an authentic relationship with God. An authentic relationship with God. Now, when it talked about fearing the Lord, that doesn't mean that we want our children to be afraid of him. It means to understand who he is, the sovereign, almighty, holy, gracious creator of the universe, and to relate to him out of humility and to yield to his will. And if they do that, the scriptures say that they will enjoy a long life. We can't help them have an authentic relationship with God if we don't have one ourselves. An authentic relationship with God for your children begins with you. Begins with you. Look at Deuteronomy 6, 5 and 6. It says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be upon your hearts. Now I want you to look at that verse in your notes and count how many times the words your and you is used. Okay, in fact, underline them. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be upon your hearts. Now, guys, that's 6 times. This has to be personal with you. Now, like it or not, children model our behavior. When they're little, we're their hero. They give us a lot of grace then, and they just want to be like us. I have this habit, okay? When I've got a lot on my mind and I'm brushing my teeth, for whatever reason, I'll start walking around the house. Now, some days I may just go into the bedroom. Sometimes my toothbrushing odyssey takes me into the kitchen or into the living room or maybe out on the patio. I don't know why. I just do it. Well, one day, my 6-year-old daughter started brushing her teeth in the bathroom. And then she wandered into the bedroom and into the living room, kind of giggling the whole time. Well, not only did I stop and think, I'd better watch how I brush my teeth, I got the bigger picture too. And it was a revelation for how easy it is for our children to model our behavior. The question is this: what are they modeling? What are they modeling? Does my daughter see how I love God and how I love her mommy? Can she see how to love her neighbor as herself by the way I do it? Can she see how to forgive others by the way I forgive them? Can she learn how to pray by watching and listening to me? Can she learn how to be kind and generous by watching me? Can she learn how to respect authority by the way I respect authority? Can she learn how to ask for forgiveness by the way I ask for forgiveness? An authentic relationship with God for them starts with you. You have to own it. There's more. As the servant leader of the home, as the head, we must be intentional about it. Deuteronomy 6, 7, and 8 says, impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. Well, the first thing that I see in that instruction is the assumption of time that will be spent with your sons and daughters. It's just assumed. It doesn't tell us to make time to do these things. It assumes you'll already be sitting at home with them and walking along the road with them. And while you're doing that, you should simply integrate God's truth into those moments. Well, I love that. It's natural. It's organic. It's not pretentious or contrived. You just pay attention. And as you're spending time with them, you just be intentional about it. Well, let me list some things that we can do to be intentional about this instruction. First of all, if those daily times, both quality and quantity times, do not exist, then you must create them. Hey, remember the round we did on margin? You have to fight for it. You have to claim or reclaim it. But first, you have to see it as vitally important for your sons and daughters and the legacy you'll leave. In the case of divorce, where the time is split between you and their mom, you'll have to work even harder. And the way you handle this, the attitude that you have as you negotiate with their mom and you try to cooperate as parents, well, that is going to have a huge impact, either negatively or positively, in the legacy that you leave. But whatever you do, do not strike some self-righteous pose and play the religion card and make it all about taking them to church. Keep it relational and pray that the two of you can work together on this, especially if both of you are Christians. And with God's help, you may even be able to come up with a strategy that you can work on together. Now that leads to the second thing. Be strategic about how you'll impress God's truth on your sons and daughters, because it just won't happen, okay? How will you do it? What's your plan, okay? When they're younger, you can start with things like memorizing Scripture and praying before the meal and before bedtime. Deuteronomy says to write God's truth on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. Well, our version of that for our 6-year-old, and we started this when she was 5, is to post a scripture that starts with each letter of the alphabet on our refrigerator. We also put it on the back of the headrest in front of her booster seat, whichever one she's working on. And we memorize them with her. To teach her how to pray, I'll ask her what she's thankful for and if there's anything she wants to ask God's help with. And then I'll integrate those things in my prayers so she can hear me. One day, just out of the blue, we sat down for dinner. And she asked if she could pray, if she could do the blessing. Well, in her own little words, she thanked God for the food, and she also thanked Him for something specific that had happened that day. Pretty cool. I'll ask her to pray about things for me, like a project I'm working on. I'll tell her how it went. One week I got the assignment on a Wednesday to speak in the services at our church that very weekend. And so I was trying to pull something together and nothing just seemed right. It was Thursday night. I still had a blank page. And so I asked my daughter to pray that I would know what God wanted me to say. Well, that was at her bedtime that Thursday night. After she went to sleep, I went back into the den and I sat on the couch, and suddenly ideas just started flowing. And I sketched out exactly what I knew God wanted me to say. And then the next morning I asked my daughter, I said, hey, do you remember how we prayed and we asked God to show me what He wanted me to say? And then I showed her the pages I'd written. And I said, this is what He wants, what He showed me. This is what He wants me to say. And her eyes got really big and she said, wow, Daddy, that's cool. If your sons and daughters are already teenagers or even in college, you can still do the same kind of things with them, only on their level. You can approach it as maybe something you want to do for yourself, and you can ask them if they'd like to join you. Just tell them the truth, really, that you could really use their help. It's not too late. Thirdly, use symbolism and ceremony to mark events and clarify promises. Now, there can be a lot of power in a ceremony when it's done right, and there can be a lot of meaning in a symbol when it's explained clearly. I've been a part of several manhood ceremonies for young men. They were designed by their fathers at strategic times in their lives. It's usually them, their dad, maybe their older brothers if they have any, and a few men who've been there with them in the journey. Some have been around a campfire or at somebody's house or maybe a private room in a restaurant. We've always gathered around some kind of meal, and then after we eat, we would all stand and speak into the young man's life, and we'd present our written words to him in some form. We've used swords and other symbols, and we usually gather around him and we'll lay hands on him and pray for him. All these have been very powerful and moving ceremonies. Well, you can create your own for your sons and your daughters, and you can come up with your own symbols to impress God's truth on their hearts. Hey, if you have boys, if you have sons, Robert Lewis has an excellent book that features some of these ceremonies for young men. It's called Raising a Modern Day Knight. In the next round, I'll be sure and share a ceremony that I did for my daughter. 2 more things. Number 4, share your successes. And number 5, share your failures. Share your successes and your failures. Model for your sons and daughters humility and grace in your successes, and humility and repentance in your failures. They need to see how God's truth impacts the way you succeed and how it affects you when you've messed up. They need to hear you say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. They need to see how you handle the good times, the tough times, and the terrible times. The covenant relationship called marriage and the legacy that flows from that into our sons and daughters, that's a battlefield, okay? I didn't say it can be, I said it is a battlefield. Our enemy, the devil, wants to destroy our marriage and undermine any legacy of faith that could then help others in their search for truth. If you drop your guard in this, you'll be blindsided. You'll be blindsided by an affair, or by a divorce, or maybe just by a marriage that's still intact, but it's become cold and just tolerable. The collateral damage can be devastating, especially when there are children involved. Well, men, we have one more round to go. We wrap things up with the good fight of faith in the final round of the series. But before we wrap this session up, I want to end this round with a short story of an incredible legacy. Robertson McQuilkin was president for 22 years of Columbia Bible College and Seminary. His wife was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And when her condition worsened, he was faced with the difficult decision of either institutionalizing his wife or resigning to care for her. Well, when the disease progressed, in 1990, he resigned as president to care for his wife full time. She stopped recognizing him in 1993. And then on September 20th, 2003, 10 years later, Muriel McQuilkin died at the age of 81. We put together some old scrapbook pictures with a segment of his resignation speech to the student body at Columbia Bible College. It seems in our culture that many men and women will take the easy way out of difficult circumstances and just start looking for the exit in their marriages. Well, I wanted you to hear from this man a different story, and then you can break for your group.
I haven't in my life experienced easy decision-making on major decisions, but one of the simplest and clearest decisions I've had to make is this one, because circumstances dictated it. Muriel, now, in the last couple of months, seems to be almost happy when with me, and almost never happy when not with me. In fact, she seems to feel trapped, becomes very fearful, sometimes almost terror, and when she can't get to me, there can be anger. She's in distress. But when I'm with her, she's happy and contented. And so I must be with her at all times. And you see, it's not only that I promised in sickness and in health, till death do us part, and I'm a man of my word. But as I have said, I don't know with this group, but I've said publicly, it's the only fair thing. She sacrificed for me for 40 years to make my life possible. So, if I cared for her for 40 years, I'd still be in debt. However, there's much more. It's not that I have to, it's that I get to. I love her very dearly, and you can tell it's not easy to talk about. She's a delight. It's a great honor to care for such a wonderful person.